class. Today I'm going to be teaching you guys about apostrophes. And the first thing I think is the most important to clear up is what is an apostrophe. So an apostrophe is a little slant like this, kind of like an upside down comma, which goes on top of a word. For example, can't. And this is an example that I will show you later, because can't is an example of a contraction. But first, I want to talk about possession when it comes to apostrophes. And what I mean by possession is it shows ownership of certain objects or things. For example, John's cat. This apostrophe shows us that this cat belongs to the subject of the sentence, which is John. And this is important because we need to know who the cat belongs to. Or in other situations, if whose water bottle, like this for example, talk about a water bottle, whose water bottle it belongs to. So if we have another example. Sarah's water bottle. So those are just two examples of how we can show possession with an apostrophe. And that brings me to my first question for our audience, which is, can you put the apostrophe in the correct location in the sentence? We are going to Mark's house. So my first question is where does the apostrophe go in the sentence?
After the S in Mark.
See, that's a good guess, but that would be used to mark plural possession. So the correct place in the sentence would be in between the K and the S, which tells us that the house belongs to Mark. And then the second use for apostrophes is going to be contractions, as I briefly mentioned earlier. And what I mean by contractions is the shortening of words, such as won't, or as I briefly mentioned earlier, can't. So the reason why we have an apostrophe here is it shortens two words into one. So won't actually stands for will not, and isn't is short for is not. And this just shows us an informal way of shortening two words. And this is why your English teacher will be asking you not to use contractions inside of your papers, because it's just an informal way of writing it. So my second example will be use of a contraction, and you guys have to put the apostrophe in the correct location of the sentence. So we're going to put where would the apostrophe go in this sentence?
After should.
That is correct, because should have is an informal way of saying should have. So that's correct. The third and final way of using an apostrophe that I'll be covering is omitting time. And what I mean by that is, for example, when the date of something is obvious or it's already been stated previously, you can shorten it by just putting an apostrophe and the later numbers of that year. So for example, the class of 85, which is shortened via the apostrophe from the class of 1985. And that will bring us to our final question, which is, where does the apostrophe go in the sentence? Okay, so where does our apostrophe go in the sentence Taylor Swift was born in '89?
Before 89.
Alright. That's correct because it omits the time, because it's evident that she was most likely born in 1989 because anything 1889 is way too far. So that is the final example, and you got 2 out of 3 correct. And this is just a brief summary on how to use these apostrophes. There's obviously some nuances because the English language is very complicated, but this should give you a brief overview of how to use it. Thank you for coming to class today.